a lot of questions, but I do want to get stories from you. I want you to tell me stories. And so I'll preface, before I tell you what story I want to hear, I'll preface it with saying, tell me a story about.
Yes.
And so, to begin with, I'd like to hear a story about growing up in the South as an African American woman or African American girl.
Yes, because I left when I was ready for college. Well, I guess I did have some experiences because of where I was living, but I was somewhat protected because my mother was home with me always, and when I was little, and I didn't venture out very far to be exposed to different kinds of things. And when I first was aware of being in a situation that could have been more pleasant was one time my mother sent me to the store. It was just right up the hill, you know. She could trust me to get that far and back. And she wanted some Brazil nuts. And I was looking for the Brazil nuts, and I didn't see them. And so then I looked further, and I finally saw them. And the clerk said, "Oh, you're talking about nigger toes." And well, I hadn't heard that expression before, but I knew it wasn't anything very nice. And of course, when I went home, I told my mother what had happened. And of course, she tried to protect my feelings, but she said, well, no matter what he called them, this is what we call them. And that was the end of that. So that was a time when I was very young. So that was something that I knew that sort of separated me from what we were learning at home. And so that was an incident. But at the same time, there were many occasions that were positive because people, you know, in stores and everything would always be very courteous. I mean, regular stores. And of course, the churches were segregated and the schools were segregated. And but outside of going to school in the church and social things that my family were attached to, I didn't have too much exposure to other things because we were a small family and we were kind of close, and we just didn't do that, you know. So I imagine if I had gone out, venturing out more away from other situations, I would have noticed. And I always I knew that I had to walk to school, especially when I started junior high school and high school. I had to walk a great distance to school, and my sister was older than I was, so I never had to walk with her. She was 5 years older than I was. But I did have to walk with my brother, who was 2.5. And, you know, it just didn't, it was just something I accepted. You know, we wanted to go to school, so we had to walk. So, but I was sure that maybe Caucasians probably had better facilities. And I learned later that the books that they no longer used were given to our system. So, and then of course, you know, as you get older, you hear things, and like, it was after I left Danville, I read, someone sent me a newspaper article saying that the town library refused to accept African Americans in the library, so they removed their seats and everybody had to stand. So, you know, little things like that. But it seems that people that I saw in department stores and things seem very friendly, you know, and well, I guess I'm just a friendly person. And, you know, I heard somebody says, one time someone said to me, you know, you can get along with both races because you seem so friendly, you know, and which is true. You know, I never had a problem with it, except I didn't like practices, you know, that precluded me maybe from doing something. And I know when we went to the movies, we always had to sit in the gallery, and that was a little trip that we would take on the weekends, you know, a bag of popcorn, and go to see a Western, you know. You had to go the next week just to see how it ended. I guess you're too young to know about movies that are continuous. The movies that you've probably seen all in the same day.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, I mean, and of course, I had our friendships, you know. There were 4 of us, as a matter of fact. This is in junior high school and high school. And everywhere we went, there was like a little quartet. And people would be disappointed if you saw one and not the other, you know. So it was a close, I guess my life was sort of closed and protected, you know. A lot I know happens in segregated places, but because we were not overly exposed, you know.
How did it make you feel to know that those practices existed?
Well, when I was a kid, I didn't pay much attention to them. You know what I mean? I had my own little world. But when I, you know, left Danville, I mean, there was still segregation. You know, Washington, you know, had its moments. As a matter of fact, Bob and I met early, and when we decided to get married, it was a time when stores were struggling with the fact that African Americans would be allowed to sit at canners, you know, counters. And if I told you this before, stop me. Well, anyway, we sat and made our whole wedding list of people who were going to come. And we just sat there. No one served us, but we just did our work, you know. And when we finished, and we felt that we had been there a sufficient length of time, we left. But as I got older and I saw how people were treated when they were trying to resist something, you know, we'd think, you know, we could have been in jail, you know, and, but as it turned out, no one did anything to harm us. They just didn't serve us lunch, you know. And I mean, that was damaging, but we expected not to be served, but we expected to make our little point of sitting there. So that, I don't know how much you want me to go.
That's okay. Thank you, Ms. Daniel, for sharing that. You talked about having a close-knit family when you were younger. Tell me your favorite story about your family.
Oh, well, my biggest thrill was that my mother was a homemaker, and my father was a teacher. He taught math. As a matter of fact, he taught me math. He taught me fractions that I still remember somewhat. But anyway, and my mother was always there, you know, and I went out to play. She knew where I was. And my favorite story, there are many, as a matter of fact, I wrote my paper for my English comprehensive exam from Howard University about my mother. But anyway, I used to like to make my mother laugh. You know, there were three of us, my older sister and my brother and myself. I was the youngest. And when I was little, and she was teaching me things at home, she would always, in a loving way, call me my little silly Billy, and, you know, ruffle up my hair, you know. My hair was long for when I was little, but she kept it, started keeping it cut short because I didn't like her to comb it, you know, and I had what they used to call a boyish bob, you know, and so, I mean, it was, I'm sure it was attractive, but, you know, but her hair was so different from mine, and everybody else's was different. I had, maybe my hair was kind of in between my mother's hair and my father's hair, and it would tangle, you know, and so she settled that by just keeping it kind of short, and when she pulled down on the hair, it didn't hurt because there weren't too many places for it to kind of be hard to comb through. Well, anyway, I like that little story because she always kind of made me feel loved while she was calling me Silly Billy. And of course, she taught me how to spell my name, which was kind of long. And when I was 5, I went to school because my birthday was in October instead of September. And because I could spell my name and count to 100 and know all of the letter names, I didn't know the letter sounds. Even though I taught reading, I don't know all of the letter sounds now. But anyway, you know, I liked the time that she spent with me, you know. That's what I liked. And when I grew older and riding bicycles or skating, I would always like to show off on the skates and one day I was showing off on the bicycle. And you know how you get a bad place in the street and you try to jump it, you know. Well, I ended up on my, you know, bottom. And so, but, you know, anything to kind of entertain her, you know, because she was kind of reserved person, you know. So that's enough. There are many stories. That's enough.
I'd like for you to tell me a story about being the youngest.
The youngest, yes. Well, being the youngest, I didn't learn too many skills because my sister was 5 years older than I was. And when my mother needed help, real help, she always had my sister help. Like, my sister learned how to be a good cook, and she learned to do real cleaning, and I was always sent out to play. And so all through college, I didn't have any experience with cooking or anything because I lived at home and commuted. I wish that I could have lived on campus, but I didn't. So, so I never had to really use those skills except to clean my room once I was big enough, considered big enough, you know. But I'm kind of losing my train of thought. I'm telling you about what?
Being the youngest?
Yeah, being the youngest. And I used to play with my brother more than my sister because when you're 5 years older, it's not too much interest that your older sister has wanting you hanging around, you know. And I guess I was a little bit of a tomboy because I used to climb trees, you know, and do all the little stuff that my brother would do, you know. And I also played marbles, you know, and but one thing I never would do, even when I was small, play in the mud. Some of the little neighborhood kids, you know, well, some of them didn't have grass, so in their yards they had mud. But fortunately, we had grass, and it was one thing I could not take is to be soiled, you know. As a matter of fact, I guess it was so noticeable that when Patty and her family moved, were on a vacation, and they drove through Danville, Virginia to see our house, you know. They stopped by neighbors, you know. Some neighbors were still there, and they told them that story. That Catherine, well, they didn't say Catherine, they said Cat would never play in the mud. And, you know, all the little kids making mud pies and stuff, you know. I don't know, so that was one thing that I didn't do. For no particular reason except I didn't like to do that. And there are many stories. I'm an old woman, you know. There are many stories, and I really enjoyed growing up. And especially when I went to a junior high school and senior high school, you know, and we had these four buddies, you know, of which one is still alive today, and we are very good friends.
Good.
More like sisters, you know.
How beautiful. I'd like to hear a story about your friends. Your favorite story.
Oh, my favorite story. Okay, I'll tell you my favorite story. One of them.
Okay.
Well, like I said, we were always together, and, you know, we took classes together. And one day, Helen, who is like a sister as of today, decided it was her birthday tomorrow, and she was not coming to school. And so I knew my mother and father would not let me stay home from school, you know. So anyway, I went to school, and I was sitting there in class, in my homeroom class, and our teacher, who just adored us, said, "Catherine, you don't look like you feel so well today. Would you like to go home?" And I said, you know, I just laughed. All of a sudden, I started looking happy again. You know? So I said, well, you know, I took her up on it, you know, but I didn't go home. I went to Helensville.
Wow. You were in junior high school?
Yes. She didn't live far from school.
Okay.
So I went to her house, and the other two were there. And I don't know what we did that day, but I don't remember anything meaningful that we did that day except just skip school, you know, because Helen said she was not, she refused to go to school on her birthday. And so I don't know, I guess the others just didn't go to, other two just didn't go to school because I was sitting in class all by myself. But when it was time for school to be over, I went home. And I didn't tell anybody that I didn't go to school. But I thought that was kind of nice of the teacher to say I wasn't feeling well. So that was wrong, and I would never tell a child to do that.
You all seem like you had a really, really great friendship.
Yeah, we did, yeah, you know. And I cherish that, you know.
Speaking of classroom, tell me a story about your favorite teacher.
Well, I guess I like Miss Motley, the one who let me go, because she was my home economics teacher as well. You know, sometimes your homeroom teacher also is a classroom teacher boy. And I liked, I liked most of my teachers, but I liked her because she was sympathetic, you know. Like one time we were a little late getting back to class because I don't know if I should be putting all this on here because high school was next to the junior high school. It looks like all of this little stuff happened in junior high school. So during recess, there were a lot of cute guys in high school. So we would go over there and talk to them. And it was just a little division. And then the bells started ringing. But from where we were, we couldn't get back in line, to get into the classroom. So we went to the girls' room. And every time someone came, we stood up on the commode so we couldn't be seen.
Wow.
But then, we knew we had to tell what happened. So we went to Miss Motley and told her that we had gone across to the high school to talk to some of our friends, and we didn't get back, and we were afraid to come to class. So she said, well, don't do it again.
She was really sympathetic.
Yeah,
Nice.
so I mean, that just really made us adore her, because she was always nice to us. And we weren't doing anything, well, I mean, we skipped class, that's not right. But I mean, there was nothing wrong going over to the fence talking to the other students, But the wrong thing was we didn't listen for the time as such. So those were about the worst things we did, I guess.
Well, it sounds like you had some good stories in junior high and
Yeah.
lots of fun.
Yeah.
I'd like to shift gears just a little bit, and actually, before I do want to know your favorite story about dating.
About dating?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Speaking of high school.
Yeah,
boys.
of course, yes. Well, of course I didn't date Bob too much because I was a junior the year that I met him, and I went back to finish my senior year in high school. So, but like in junior high school, there was this song, oh Johnny, how you can lie. I don't know. That's not your time. So.
What's the name of the song?
Oh Johnny.
Oh Johnny. Okay.
Yeah. And there was this cute little guy, and his name was Johnny. And the kids would come over to our house, and we had the swing on our front porch. We had this wide porch. The house was like a salt shaker. It was a big house. But anyway, and we would gather on the porch, and we would be singing these songs. And when that song came out, oh Johnny, we would think about the cute guy and say, and pretend his name was Johnny, So, I mean, and then of course, we went to the prom and all that, stuff like that. But if one of us liked a guy of the four, and we broke up, that meant that guy was too boo. Nobody could dare think of him anymore in a nice way. No, well, he's off our lids. We were kind of silly, As a matter of fact, that little picture of me from high school reminds me of, did I ever show you that picture?
No, I don't think you did.
Do you?
We can pause it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, not the song, not that same period, but I'm just saying that picture could have been.
I'm sorry. You can go ahead. The picture.
That picture could have been of me, 15, 16, or 17, because I finished high school when I was 17.
Okay.
But when I entered college, I was 17, but I was soon 18, It's that first 5, that I was telling you about going to school early. Yeah. So I must confess, we had a lot of fun in high school,
Okay, so you were telling me before, and I think I told you I wanted to come back to the story about how you and your husband met.
Yes.
And I'd like to know a little bit more about, or you can just tell me your favorite story about you and your husband's meeting, or even now.
Oh, we've been married 58 years.
58 years.
Yes.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
soon 59 because we got married in August.
Wow.
Yes. That'll be 59 years in August 17th.
That's beautiful.
Well, there's so many stories. But we were friends forever, you know. And I just, well, I met him when I was 16 because I was a junior. And I went back and then to Danville to finish my senior year. As a matter of fact, I went back to Danville alone because my father, that end of my junior year, just before the school year ended, took a job in Washington, D.C. because teachers at that time were not making money year-round. And my uncle who one of my uncles who lived in Washington, his brother, told him about a job that he could earn more money. And and so he went to Washington maybe in the spring, and my mother and I joined him in the summer. Mm-hmm. And that's when I met Bob. And so I came home and I went back into my old high school pattern, you know. But what I did do, you know, sometimes when we get annoyed with the guys, we said, well, I said, I'm not worried about who's going to take me to the prom, because if this guy doesn't act right, I'll have my friend Bob come down. I'll have my friend, it was Bob this, Bob that, you know. He was going to deliver me. But anyway, we all got to the prom. But so when I came back, of course, I had graduated and I was ready for college. And it just turns out that Bob and I both went to Howard. Mm-hmm. And we were both in fine arts. And so Bob was very studious, and I was still a little flighty at 17 and 18. And I did a lot. I had to work a lot in the library because that helped with my tuition, because my brother was at Howard at the same time. And teachers didn't get much pay, you know. But anyway, so, I mean, we were just friends. We were up in the art department doing our things, you know, being friends, and more friends than romantic, you know. It was, you know, it was just one of those things. We just knew that each other was there. You know, if I needed anything, and he could help me with it, you know, or if he needed anything. And sometimes we would just stay up there and paint or whatever it was that we were doing. And, but Bob, I must confess, was more studious than I. And between working in the library and seeing that I had some social hour and my classwork, we were really just good friends, you know. And then when I finished, we marched together from at graduation day, and then he went off to Skowhegan, Maine, because he had a scholarship from Howard for the summer to do painting. And then I got a job as a cartographic drafts person in the government,